let's get the most cutting edge take we're going to get this week on the show. Jack, you've seen Thor 4.
Yes, I have. And
you're going to give a spoiler-free impressions here, because I'm about to go see it, and the other lads probably will soon enough.
Yeah, in an alternative universe, like in the multiverse, Garrett actually blew off this podcast this evening. Like, not literally, but he decided to go see Thor. So I wonder how that alternative universe Garrett would have felt having not wanted to do this podcast and go to see the movie. Because Thor, if I had to describe it in a sound, it would be, which is the sort of sound of somebody that's like, did you enjoy it? And you're like, well, I think I enjoyed it, but also at the same time, it kind of wasn't that good. It's just a very disjointed movie.
I read a review in the San Francisco Chronicle, of all things, that was like, the movie lurches back and forth between really good and really bad.
It's a fair thing to say, like that. It's one of those movies where you'll come out of it, and if you just focus on the really, like, the fun moments or the cool moments, you'll go like, okay, yeah, positive. But if you actually sort of scratch a bit under the surface, you realise that the plot and the editing of this movie feels so weird. The way it kind of just moves from scene to scene and doesn't really dwell on too much. And then it's a bit of a tonal mess as well, in that obviously kind of, you know, it's a Taika Waititi movie, and he has his own style and form that he kind of introduced to the MCU with Thor Ragnarok, but this one just does not feel as cohesively done as that. Like, they picked their moments in Thor Ragnarok when it made sense for Thor to be a bit silly and for Thor to, you know, be a bit more serious and like actually try and get things done. In this movie, there were moments within scenes where it would just, the tone would kind of like neck-breakingly switch between oh my god, somebody has something seriously wrong that we need to sort out, he says, not giving any spoilers, and that just did not feel right. Like, things I liked about the movie is that some of the quips were really good. Russell Crowe's Greek accent, 10 out of 10, no notes.
An absolute, like a Mark Robinson level master of accents, Russell Crowe, it's got to be said. No
notes whatsoever, perfect. Could not be improved upon in any way at any point during this period of time. I think Natalie Portman was brilliant. I don't think anyone told her that she was in a sort of silly time Marvel movie, because she did bring some real acting to this movie, and that was kind of appreciated. Korg and Tessa Thompson sort of being kind of pals at points during the movie and having like a nice little bond was a good relationship that they managed to forge here. But all in all, there were things about the film that just felt kind of wasted. Guardians of the Galaxy, obviously, as you've seen from the trailers, are in the movie. Kind of felt a bit wasted. Didn't really do much with them. The way it shifted just... Sorry, what were you going to...
I was going to say, the thing that I have been most interested in is because the only modern run of... not modern run, but the only run of Thor that I've truly, like... And I haven't read... I really should read Thor the Unworthy, where Jane becomes Thor, but this movie obviously borrows heavily from Jason Aaron's Thor run, where he does the God Butcher storyline. Yeah. And the God Butcher storyline in the comics fucking rocks. Yeah. Which is why, as soon as I started hearing disappointing things about this, I was like, God damn it.
Right, so my final point was going to be, I might as well just jump to it, because I don't want to intentionally give anything away. But my final point about this movie is that Christian Bale sums up this movie completely perfectly, in that anytime he's on the screen and what he's doing is really cool. His whole character, his motivation and everything, totally understandable. They just don't really use him much. And he's called Gore the Good God Butcher, and you don't see him butchering enough gods for my liking. It's more like Gore that occasionally will butcher a god, but most of the time just stands around in a hoodie looking mean.
In like the comic books, it is constantly going like between Thor's arc and then cutting back to Gore, who is slaying entire pantheons of gods in a go.
Yeah. We don't get it.
Again, it rocks.
We don't get enough of it, anywhere near enough of it. And it just, the way that, again, no spoilers for the ending, but the way that they present the end of the movie, I thought was really good. Like a great emotional climax for the characters that are involved in the ending of the movie. But it didn't feel like they earned it from the way that they kind of transitioned the character stories throughout the film. There were things that just felt too quick. There were things that they feel like they didn't build up well. And like I say, editing-wise and script-wise and just tonally in general, and the way just went from scene to scene, it just didn't feel cohesive.
Does it feel like one of those that is made worse by the things it has to adhere to in the wider universe? Or does it just feel like even irrespective of that, it's a mess?
There wasn't even much wider universe implications. Like this just felt like a genuine sequel to the Thor story that we have up to this point. That's what I mean. Like, see,
the Thory, if you will.
The Thory. It's a good Thory. And it's like sounds like Greg Davis's Chris Eubank accent. YouTube for anyone. But if you'd seen the other MCU movies and were expecting, continuations and hints and plots and bits and pieces, aside from a little post-credits teasing something future, but probably just future for the Thor universe, you maybe got something, but we didn't get a lot of references back to anything other than Thor's relationship with Jane Foster, and the fact that Thor went off at the end of Endgame with the Guardians of the Galaxy, who had a cup of coffee and then left. And it was
it's very like, we need to do some stuff at the start that shows how the universe led to this. We need to do some stuff at the very end to show where this pivots off to, but in the middle, fuck it.
In the middle, fuck it. The thing is, though, some of the fuck it moments were fucking good. And some of the fucking moments were just not good and kind of felt pointless. And that was the thing. It was, you can't come out of this movie and say flat out that it sucks, because there are parts of it that absolutely don't suck. And there's some really cool action scenes, and the way they use, obviously, again, from the trailer, this is not spoiling it for anyone, but they use Guns N' Roses music throughout this movie. And they use the 3 big songs from Appetite for Destruction, like quite early in the movie, and I'm like, right, so you seem to like they've kind of blown their wad a little bit on all the Guns N' Roses, and then at some point in a really pivotal scene they drop November Rain, and I was just like, oh fuck, like I've never seen November Rain in a context of a scene like this, and it is really, really cool what is happening while November Rain is like getting it to its like climactic point. And that made me want to like stand up and just mosh like some like late 80s early 90s metal fan who just wants to ignore the fact that grunge existed and just be in that universe forever. That was super cool.
Does it top what happens with Immigrant Song the second time round, the reprise, if you will, in Ragnarok?
It's up there. It's up there.
The Immigrant Song in School of Rock when he's driving along in the bus.
Yeah, it's no good. It's not as good
Jesus,
as Jack
how
Black.
many fucking films has Immigrant Song been in? Because he's been in Shrek 2 as well.
Yeah.
Well, Led Zeppelin didn't used to do it.
For School of Rock, they did a video with the whole cast on stage where they filmed the final scene, begging Led Zeppelin to let them use the song because they never used to.
Yeah. All I want to see, and by the way, this is not a spoiler, this was not mentioned, but then Mark, if we're going to stick in that sort of like heavy rock metal thing, all I want to see is Apocalypse be a villain in the Thor universe next, and then just use the whole of Power Slave by Iron Maiden to soundtrack the sort of creepy Egyptian vibes that Apocalypse is bringing to it.
Yeah, I'm getting bored
just
of that.
like the final climactic battle of the riff of Power Slave as Thor comes over at the top of a pyramid and smashes Apocalypse in the grill. That would be pretty awesome. But yeah, the music and stuff in the movie was incredible. The way that I love the way that they used it, and because it's Marvel, they just chuck shitloads of money at it and get really good songs that kind of pack a punch, and they're not just they're not just absurd needle drops, they actually suit the balletic style of the scenes that they used in, I think, very, very well. Like the opening scene where he's got, again, you've seen it in the trailer, where he's got like the red metal jacket on and the, you know, the t-shirt and no sleeves and everything. The way they use GNR in that particular scene is just incredible. Like it's perfect, and it kind of takes you down the path of where you think they might be going with this movie in the way that Thor behaves and the way that everyone else around them is I'm not going to say like sick of Thor, but a little bit like, oh, for fuck's sake. And I kind of thought that maybe like a meta commentary on how people were starting to feel about the MCU, but nothing after that was anywhere near that clever, and it just kind of turned into a weird sort of like jerky parade of a movie, in going back and forth, in being very good and then being not very good. So yeah, it doesn't matter really. It wasn't like it felt like it had to go through a, you know, like traditional MCU hand dryer. It just felt like it was edited by somebody that had never edited a major motion picture before, and that's odd considering how on point Taika Waititi usually is with a lot of his choices. But yeah, I don't know, maybe you hear that like the original cut was 2.5 hours long or something, and you know there's going to be released a Taika cut at some point to get a full picture of what the movie could have been. But what it was a bit of a mess, but a very enjoyable mess in places, I would say.